$6 million. That's all it took to shake the confidence of Silicon Valley. America once believed AI was a game reserved for the ultra-wealthy. But China's DeepSeek model has just flipped the board with a budget of less than 1/10. Washington believes sanctions would choke its rival. Yet reality is revealing a paradox. Is this pressure actually handing Beijing the keys to the future? In February of this year, the Chinese hedge fund Highflyer launched a project. Quietly, they trained the DeepSeek V3 model using extremely limited resources. Almost immediately, the project wiped out billions of dollars in market value across Silicon Valley. This was not a lucky accident in a lab. It was the direct result of an intensely ruthless survival system. The US once believed tariffs would firmly protect its domestic economy. Washington repeatedly imposed chip sanctions to lock down its rivals' technology. But what's happening on the ground tells a completely different story. American consumers are now struggling under relentless waves of inflation. They are forced to pay extremely high prices for AI services. Meanwhile, US restrictions have unintentionally created a machine of self-reliance. China has not been isolated or collapsed, as intelligence reports once predicted. Instead, sanctions have become a deadline, forcing them to stand on their own. They are now using that immense Western pressure to rewrite the rules of the global game. This story of momentum doesn't stop in the virtual world of algorithms. Look at the most brutal physical battleground today, the electric vehicle market. The West rushed to build massive tariff walls. Taxes on each vehicle have reached thousands of euros. Washington and Brussels aim to protect their domestic auto industries. They wanted to stop the flood of low-cost electric vehicles entering Europe. But the latest data has shattered that illusion. BYD's sales in Europe have surged by 272%. Meanwhile, Tesla has dropped by more than 10% in its own backyard. Expensive tariff barriers have clearly become a useless weapon. The West still believes its rival is simply cutting prices. But in reality, Beijing is operating a fully optimized system. Their companies mine their own lithium and manufacture their own batteries. They build massive closed-loop factory networks. They even operate dedicated shipping fleets to transport vehicles to Europe. When you control every step of the supply chain, tariffs lose their power. Their core advantage doesn't come from reckless price cutting. It comes from a massive industrial system with no blind spots. Now imagine a bird's eye view of a bustling port in Shanghai. Massive cargo fleets move in an endless line toward the open ocean. This scene carries a number that has shocked the global financial world. China has just recorded a historic $1 trillion trade surplus. Despite every effort to decouple, the world simply cannot stop consuming its goods. This enormous surplus was not created in a peaceful environment. It was forged under a storm of tariffs and constant pressure from Western economies. Washington has tried to build trade barriers everywhere it can, but global trade flows always find a way around. Factories in Shenzhen are never fighting alone in international markets. They are links in a brutally efficient closed supply chain. From the smallest components to massive electric drivetrains, everything is produced side by side. Transportation costs and storage time are pushed to the lowest levels in the world. Compare that to legacy automakers in the West. They struggle to gather parts from dozens of different countries. That fragmentation drains both time and billions of dollars. Meanwhile, China's industrial machine operates like a single unified organism. They don't focus on maximizing profit on each product. They crush competitors through sheer scale and relentless speed of innovation. The US once believed supply chain sanctions would suffocate its rival, but it underestimated the resilience of a manufacturing-first economy. The West tried to divide the world into separate economic blocks. Beijing responded by turning itself into an irreplaceable ecosystem. These restrictions have effectively purged weaker companies inside China. Only the strongest and most ruthless survive and expand globally. This dominance is no longer limited to four-wheeled vehicles. It is quietly spreading into the most critical technologies of humanity. Washington believes semiconductor sanctions would push China's technology back to the Stone Age. They cut off access to the world's most advanced lithography machines. The goal was to permanently eliminate Beijing's ability to produce advanced chips. But this extreme pressure has triggered the opposite effect. It has become a countdown clock, forcing full self-reliance at any cost. Engineers at Huawei have found ways to work around harsh physical limitations. When they couldn't buy new equipment, they repurposed older lithography systems. By stacking multiple layers of chips, they created combined processing power. There is a strong possibility they pushed outdated machines to deliver performance comparable to 5-nanometer chips. It's like using a bicycle to keep up with a Formula One race car. This effort proves that sanctions are not an impenetrable wall. They are simply a barrier that forces a rival to stand on its own feet. Looking at this rapid progress, it's easy for the West to assume China is a flawless machine. But the reality behind these glowing reports is far darker and more brutal. Its domestic economy is being dragged down by a severe real estate crisis. Major developers have collapsed, leaving massive bad debt weighing on the banking system. Consumers are tightening their spending out of fear, causing demand to plunge. Across the country, deflation is taking hold, and entire cities sit eerily empty. That $1 trillion trade surplus is not purely a sign of strength. It is also a signal of panic and an intense fight for survival. When the domestic market freezes, factories have nowhere else to go. They are forced to flood global markets with ruthless efficiency. Excess goods are exported at extremely low prices just to stay alive. They are not chasing massive profits, they are fighting to avoid collapse. So if domestically produced chips are expensive and prone to failure, where does the money come from? The truth is, the success rate of chip stacking is still very low. The process requires extreme precision, but older systems have too many limitations. Thousands of defective chips must be discarded, driving real production costs sky high. They cannot compete on pure efficiency with the world's leading foundries. Under normal market conditions, these projects might have already failed, but Beijing does not operate on short-term profit charts. It uses massive state resources to absorb those losses. The government is willing to burn billions of dollars to buy time and secure long-term survival. For them, the goal is not to produce the cheapest chip tomorrow. The goal is total technological independence, where no one can interfere. This industrial system would rather take heavy losses than kneel for supply. While Americans are busy counting defective chips and mocking inefficiency, they overlook something critical. Every chip produced is a brick laid on the road to the future. Artificial intelligence, electric vehicles, and those closed-loop factory networks all share one fatal weakness. They require an enormous and stable supply of energy to keep running smoothly every single day. The US and Europe are still trapped in what feels like endless political infighting. They argue over environmental standards, costs, and the safety of nuclear power. Meanwhile, China has quietly completed a historic technological breakthrough. The world's first thorium nuclear reactor has gone live in the Gobi Desert. Even the most respected Western scientific journals have had to acknowledge that this project exists. And this reactor system is far beyond a simple simulation or a theoretical experiment. It has reached one of the most difficult engineering milestones in the global energy industry. The system can be refueled continuously without shutting down for cooling. What the West only dared to sketch on blueprints, the East is actually plugged in and put to work. This energy network is designed to power the future of their country. It will feed massive AI server clusters and millions of smokeless electric vehicle charging stations. Now look at the reaction of famous YouTuber iShowSpeed when he visited the streets of Shanghai. Instead of seeing the poor and closed-off country he had been taught to expect from television, he was stunned. In front of millions of Western viewers were streets that looked remarkably safe and clean. They saw infrastructure so modern it was hard to believe, and food that was shockingly affordable. That moment of disbelief on a phone screen was the collapse of a perception trap. For decades, the West has comforted itself with outdated assumptions. It believed its rival's strength was nothing more than an illusion inflated by state propaganda. But reality on the ground is now telling the exact opposite story. Beijing's soft power is not exploding because of dry white papers released by the government. It spreads through the astonishment of travelers who witness this new society with their own eyes. America has unintentionally helped raise a giant rival while remaining drunk on its own arrogance. And that visual advantage only reinforces China's physical power. They have already built the hard infrastructure needed to operate the future of humanity. But modern technology and abundant energy are still only scattered gears. America's real rival is not any single machine or any single chip. What is truly frightening is the way these giant systems are being assembled and aimed at the future. The US runs its economy on short 4-year election cycles. Politicians constantly shift policy to win over domestic voters. Long-term strategic plans are often torn apart every time the White House changes hands. Beijing faces none of that noisy campaign pressure. It is quietly laying out a map to shape the standards of the next decade. Its 15th 5-year plan is about to be formally activated. This is not some empty propaganda document printed for headlines. It is a detailed blueprint designed to lock in momentum across entire industries. Every national resource is being pushed toward one supreme goal: complete self-reliance against any economic attack from the outside. The West is trying to fix its slowing economy one loose puzzle piece at a time. It pours subsidies into a few chip plants and waits for a miracle. But a semiconductor factory cannot survive without a cheap industrial power grid. It will also fail quickly without a component supply chain sitting right beside it. China's plan solves this problem with ruthless thoroughness. It does not build isolated factories inside empty ecosystems. It plans everything in sync, from rare earth mines to nuclear power stations. It connects giant AI data centers to automated logistics systems. The speed and scale of this execution go far beyond what Western democracies can currently match. This geopolitical race is not a quiet finish line waiting in the distance. If Washington keeps tightening tariffs and sanctions the way it is now, Beijing will likely accelerate its domination of the global south. It could lock down emerging markets within the next 3 years. But these giant machines still carry critical weaknesses. If the domestic real estate crisis explodes beyond control, its export-driven industrial system could immediately lose its lifeline of funding. The most dangerous variable, and the one people notice the least, is the endurance of the population itself. But unless internal collapse is strong enough to bring this system down first, China's technological self-reliance will likely reach an irreversible threshold before 2030. Western audiences often think this is just a power game played by elites, but ordinary Americans are paying for this systemic decline directly. They see daily living costs rising because of protective tariff barriers. Talented engineers in Silicon Valley are staring at a very uncertain future. They risk losing their monopoly position to cheap open source models. America's national power grid is already straining under the demands of new technologies. At the same time, energy security remains trapped by overlapping environmental rules and regulatory gridlock. The US is trying to use law to defend the advantages of the past. Its rival is using engineering power to write the rules of the future. The West still prefers to stare at its rival's weaknesses to reassure itself. It mocks defective chips and ghost cities with empty streets. But that arrogance is blinding it to a brutally cold geopolitical reality. No empire in history has ever risen without enduring severe crises. The real difference lies in the ability to absorb pain and keep moving forward. Pressure from Washington has not paralyzed the command system in Beijing. It has only helped eliminate the last illusions of global cooperation. Every effort to block advanced technology is backfiring in a bitter way. These measures are training the rival to become immune to the very economic attacks meant to stop it. Sanctions have not created a safe wall to protect the West. They are only a warning siren, signaling the deadline for a giant to stand on its own feet. If internal survival pressure cannot break this machine from within, it will soon become an unstoppable force on a global scale. And when the rules of the future are decided by long-term strategic vision, what will the West do besides keep arguing over past glory? Are you truly ready to live in a completely new world? A world where the power setting the pace for humanity no longer speaks English?